Great, thanks.
No problem. We're good to go.
Okay, so thanks for joining today. My name is Chet Parsons. I'm the Executive Director of the Central Virginia Transportation Authority. There's a handful of new faces in the group. This is the Finance Directors Working Group for the CVTA, and thank you for serving in this capacity. Before we get into my agenda, let's just go around and do some introductions. Just say who you are, what your role is, and who you represent. And I'll just call names just to make sure I understand, make sure everybody's covered. So, Trip Lawrence.
Hey, Trip Lawrence. I'm the Director of Financial Services with New Kent County.
Awesome. Thanks. Welcome. Lauren Knoll.
Good morning. I'm Lauren Knoll. I'm the Acting Finance Director for Hanover County.
Good morning. Says Robin Schugart. Is that Robin?
Yes, that's me. I'm Robin Schugart. I'm the Finance Director and Treasurer of the Town of Ashland.
Great. Thanks. Andrea.
I'm Andrea Gardner with New Kent County, and I'm the Assistant Director of Financial Services.
Welcome. Michael Wynn.
Hey, good morning, Chad. Good morning, everyone. Yeah, Michael Wynn. I'm a Deputy Director of Finance with the City of Richmond.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Matt.
Yep, Matt Harris, Chesterfield County.
Good morning. Brandon.
Brandon Hinton with Henrico County.
Hey, Brandon. All right, so internal team. Kevin?
Kevin Roddy with PFM, the authority's financial advisor.
And Megan?
Good morning, Megan Gilliland with Kaufman and Knowles. We serve as bond counsel to CVTA.
And finally, I think Lauren Shepard.
Good morning. I'm Lauren Shepard. I'm the CFO at Plan RVA. We provide support to CVTA.
All right, awesome. So the reason we're here today, I think I communicated some of this in the invitation. CVTA is moving forward with a very deliberate step-by-step process to evaluate the issuance of bonds for transportation projects. So that's the main goal, but I wanted to start today with just a quick overview for those who may not be as familiar as others. So CVTA was created in 2020 by the General Assembly. We have a few statutory roles that we play. Primarily, we are recipients of two specific tax revenues, a sales and use tax and a gas tax, within our 9 jurisdictions in the Richmond region, of which you serve. And those tax revenues are split 3 different ways. Right now, well, the 3 different ways. 50% of all tax revenues go back to the localities. You all are well aware of that. Hopefully you see that on a regular basis in your reporting. 15% goes to GRTC for regional public transportation, and then the remaining 35% is distributed by the CVTA in a application-driven, data-driven process to evaluate big regional projects. Right now, all of that funding is distributed on a pay-go basis. So revenues come in, revenues go out based on the different criteria for each of those 3 funding pots. What we are looking at now is the additional statutory authority of the CVTA to issue bonds. So we know that everyone in the region is at a different place in terms of comfort level for that. The authority itself has been discussing this for at least 2 years, if not a little bit longer. And we are, at this point, going through a bond validation process to just make sure that everything is set up for the authority to move forward in a very comfortable manner when it does make the decision to issue those bonds. So the goal today is to kind of talk through initially that validation process, then talk about our regional funding and the recent decisions by the authority, and then to talk about what the specific tasks are for the finance director's working group in relation to everything else that's going on in parallel. And then, talk about timelines, next steps, et cetera. Our hope is that we engage the finance directors from time to time. This is not expected to be a super time intensive demand on your schedules, but we do, and the finance committee greatly appreciate your support and assistance as we try and work through this for the CVTA uncharted territory. So with that, I'd like to turn it quickly over to Megan to talk about the validation process and where things are in that effort.
Sure. Thanks, Chet. I'll keep sort of my thoughts high level brief. And of course, if there are any questions, I'm happy to answer them. Right now, CVTA is in the initial sort of phase of a bond validation. Bond validations are authorized under state law under the Public Finance Act for any state created entity that has bond issuing authority like CVTA has. We contemplate asking the court to analyze and, for lack of a better word, validate or sign off on the constitutional and statutory construct of the CVTA Act, the enabling legislation that creates CVTA, the revenue bonds that we would propose to issue, the validity of the taxes that are being collected that would be used as the repayment source for those bonds, and then also any of the overall bond covenants and just general structure of that financing transaction. One additional item that we would like the court to consider is the project selection process that is being used by CVTA, since that is an item that is outlined in high level in the enabling legislation. So I think that's probably, Chet, the main focus of today's call, and that's kind of how it fits into the validation process. We're working with CVTA staff on the underlying documents, trust indenture that CVTA would ultimately enter into when that initial series of bonds is issued. And that document would also be presented to the court as part of our pleadings for them to review and validate. The finance committee and both the larger CVTA board have signed off, approved CVTA staff moving forward with drafting those documents and getting everything prepared to be presented back to finance committee and then to the larger authority once the documents are ready to be submitted to the court to initiate that validation process. I'll stop there. I feel like I said validate maybe 10 times, so I'm happy to answer any questions.
Yeah, any questions early on? Yeah, and those of us who are talking about this on a weekly or every other week basis are probably way more familiar with everything than everybody else. So please interrupt as needed.
Yeah, bond validations don't happen on a regular basis, particularly with localities. County, cities, towns have sort of a tried and true issuing authority and structure that folks are comfortable with. Given the regional taxes and sort of the history of other regional transportation authorities in the Commonwealth, I think CVTA would like to have that comfort of having the court consider and validate the structure before we were to enter the market and consider selling bonds. So it provides CVTA with some comfort ahead of time that the structure is appropriate, and it limits folks contesting a sale once we've started that process. So it gives us a little more control over sort of the timing and minimizes the ability for there to be any contesting or suits during that sale or closing process.
Yeah, Megan, and I'd just add, I mean, the structure we're proposing is not, totally unique. NBTA had a similar structure. They went through the same validation. So this has gone through. But even with that, anybody could throw something in, protest, and muck up the process. So that was our recommendation. Better safe than getting caught up in something, since this is a new credit.
Yep. The Northern Virginia Transportation Authority has gone through this process, as has the Hampton Roads Transportation Accountability Commissions, sort of the two sister entities to CVTA, have all done this as well. So we have a good plan and process for moving forward using the validation.
Great. Thanks, Megan.
Of course.
So yeah, let's just move on. So the next item is kind of this process is in parallel. There's a lot of different moving parts among different groups. So I mentioned in the review of the CVTA the tax revenues that come in. The 35% that we award for the big regional projects, like the I-64 widening or short pump or other ones, that's on a 2-year cycle. So CVTA is moving forward with our next round of funding, which is round 4. That will start in July. And the expectation is, well, the adopted schedule is July. The application's open for locality applications. And then that process will run through roughly March or April of 26. So we are hoping that we can move forward with this bond investigation so that when we get to the regional awards next spring, that we have a better picture of one, what those regional awards are. So what projects may come off the table or be reduced in cost, as well as what are the high priority projects for consideration in a bond issue. So all of these things are happening at one time, intentionally. We want to be aware as we move forward, kind of what those big projects are that are going to bubble up. So that's kind of the regional funding process, and I put this on the screen. We have a memo that was approved by the authority at their April 25th meeting, and I could share this back out to everybody after the meeting. So it basically is the authority approved kind of marching orders for 3 different committees that advise and recommend actions for the elected officials on the board. First of all, the technical advisory committee is essentially made up of the lead transportation staff, whether that's public works, planning, et cetera, from each of the 9 localities. Their goal and their charge here is to identify those priority projects that have true regional impact, regardless of political boundary or cost. The idea here is that each locality chooses one project to start to assemble a candidate listing for consideration in a bond issuance. In addition to identifying the projects, the TAC is also tasked with developing timelines for those identified projects, because we want to start looking out, like in our 6-year window, what are those project needs, and hopefully we can start to slot those into an annual financial demand in terms of the amounts and timing. Information that the TAC needs to be considering are, project phasing, construction right away, even planning and engineering or design build. In some cases, year of expenditure and relationship to additional funding sources, whether that's your local CIP or economic development dollars somewhere else or other sources. And then finally, the TAC is supposed to be looking at the CVTA funding need for each project in relation to the overall project budget. So is the request for full funding to get a project off the ground and through construction? Is it for a match to partner with some other funding source like Smart Scale or federal grant or local funding or some other type of funding scenario. So that's the TAC focus. It's really the project development side. The working group, this group, is really tasked with being able to understand the structure of the funding package. So first of all, and I think most importantly at this point, is to understand the types of bonds that are available to the CVTA, what the terms are for those packages, cost of issuance of a bond in comparison to the amount, and the impact an initial issuance might have on future bonding capacity or other impacts for the CVTA. We have not done this before, so I think that needs to be said at the beginning. Using the feedback from the TAC on the types of projects that are being considered, the development details, the scheduling. The finance director's work group is tasked with preparing a regional snapshot of budget demands, hopefully by year, but that could evolve as we move through this process. Developing funding need projections by year that'll cover the overall costs for those regional priorities, and then finally working with the finance committee directly to refine or prioritize a project package to meet the funding focus for the CVTA. And then ultimately, the finance committee is going to be taking the input from this group as well as the technical committee to look at an overall funding package and its financial impacts in relation to the estimated tax revenues that we receive on an annual basis from VDOT, requesting additional information from TAC as needed to clarify priority projects, and then working with Megan and Kevin and their teams to understand kind of the guardrails for development of an initial package, its impact on the annual regional project budget, and then ultimately prepare a package for consideration by the full authority. The initial discussions, just before I turn this over to the next discussion point, is that we would not be interested as an authority in committing our entire regional budget for a bond package, that it would be a portion of said budget, so that there is still what we are operating under now, this pay-go model, where revenues in, revenues out on an annual basis to provide more flexibility for all of the regional needs. That is the assumption and the kind of the marching orders that we've received up till this point from the Finance Committee. With that, I'd like to ask, before we go over to questions, I'd like to ask Kevin to kind of step in on item 4 directly, and then any other guidance you want to provide at this point in terms of clarification before we get into questions from the members.
Yeah, thanks, Chet. I think what it's safe to say, we would be bringing what you typically refer to as a plan of finance back to this group that would explain the various items out here, let you see an amortization schedule, a projected cost of funds, and then as Chet said, how much of the projects we would be willing to able to finance in this first issuance, as well as what remaining future capacity you have. The authority put a couple policies in recently, a 2 times debt service coverage policy. So we would show you how that works with the newest update projection on revenues. So you'd get a snapshot to see how this all fits into the overall package, and what future capacity that you would likely have. As one of the notes said there, we're thinking taking the conservative route on the financing part of this as just sales tax only, not pledging the fuels tax, and we'll still have significant coverage. But if we feel that the fuels tax is, certainly volatile looking out there, the likely term of these bonds. So let's just stick with that source. But again, you'll be provided all of this information at a later date.
All right. Thanks, Kevin. The timeline for this process is, again, all of these things are connected. So I've had this conversation earlier this week with the TAC in terms of their responsibilities of developing a project or bringing forward a project per locality. Of course, their first question was, how much do we have to spend? So that's kind of where this group needs to I think, work in conjunction with TAC to kind of develop those guidelines in terms of what that initial package dollar amount should be for TAC to consider as they bring forward projects. I think obviously there's a learning curve as we all get comfortable with this process. My opinion is that TAC needs to come forward with a project no matter what the cost is. And then each locality does that, and then we work together to kind of understand what the limitations on each of those projects are and what the range of available dollars might be to apply. Okay, I feel like we've been going 100 miles an hour. Let's take a second and breathe and see what questions members might have. If you're totally overwhelmed and need some time to absorb all this, that's totally understandable as well. So thoughts, comments, questions?
Chad, this is Brandon with Henrico.
Yeah.
I just want to throw out when TAC, I'm sure this is already happening, when TAC is throwing projects out there, that they also have timelines and status is in, are they under design? Just getting a better feel of when any bonds, should there be bonds, are needed, so we can help put our head around timing.
Yes, absolutely. That's critical because, well, just the nature of having a bond available is that we want projects to be ready to go when that funding comes in. So that's going to be a huge part of that. Yes, TAC is aware. I guess I'll put you on the spot, Matt. Is there anything that you want to share from the Chesterfield experience that would be helpful for this group?
No, I mean, not in particular. I mean, it's not something that I think we find particularly, scary or even complicated. I know that our setup is a little bit different in terms of the structure and whatnot, but I mean, it was well received. We've been a proponent of doing this for CVTA for a long time, so we're here to help. I can lend any of our experiences that we had, going to market with this. But it was a big success. We have a lot of projects rolling each and every day because of it. So, here to help any way I can.
Okay, great. Thank you. Other comments, questions? Okay, so I think that Megan, Kevin, I think maybe the best next step is to put together maybe a high level list of assumptions in terms of package amount, timeline, just kind of that general guardrail understanding for this group to consider and push back on, hopefully, so that we can start to put together some guidance for the TAC as they start to develop a project package. In terms of time frame, my hope is that we get this on the agenda for the TAC, at least in terms of general guidelines for their June meeting, which is second Monday in June, before we get into the heat of the summer, so that they can have that information as they start to come up with project lists. I feel like this is something that we can all pass around through email, but certainly I'd be more than willing to get back on a call at some point before that TAC meeting if there's anything pressing that needs to be discussed. Does that make sense, Megan?
Sure.
Okay.
So I think I heard you say a high level timeline as far as the types of projects that would be available and ready to move forward when we have closed on a bond issue ultimately, and sort of backing into a timeline from that being our sort of.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like the tax question right now, TAC, the tax question is, how big of a project should I be proposing?
Got it.
For Henrico, for Goochland, for whoever. So I think if we can provide some guidance in terms of, we're looking at $100 million bonds, that would help them come up with some reasonable offerings in terms of actual projects.
Okay.
Chet, let me offer a couple thoughts. I mean, I think with tax exempt bonds, you want to spend the proceeds within a couple years of issuance. Generally, you don't want to issue today and it sit out there for 5 years. You start running into arbitrage problems. So you're typically, Megan, 24-month ish spend. So that's generally what you're speaking of. And in terms of capacity, I think we've consistently shown just the sales tax only leverages about 300 million of projects. So I think it's it sounds like it's a little bit of chicken and egg. They're trying to figure out which projects. I think they've kind of got to evaluate. I would agree with your earlier statement of they've got to bring you the projects, and then the authority board can ultimately decide how much of its capacity they want to use for the projects. Certainly, you don't have to. You can have multiple financings. It doesn't all have to be done up front at one time. So I think it's just going to need to fit into your existing plan of finance and draw schedules, and so I think those are sort of the guardrails. You've got maybe a $300 million credit card limit, and how much of it do you want to spend, and how high do you prioritize projects?
And how fast can those projects get moving?
Right.
Yeah.
And you may determine, because I mean we're talking bond issuance in 26, you may determine that no, we're really not ready until 27. These are the projects we want to do. We prioritize that, but we're not going to start spending money until 27 or whatever, and you're reserving this additional capacity for that. So I think you're smart by starting with the projects, and then we can adapt the financing around it.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
Kevin, thank you for saying that. That's exactly where I was going as well. Is just make sure that we can start talking about the process, and be ready to go when ready. But we need to be the projects need to be ready before we pull the trigger.
Absolutely. There's the market's okay right now. It's not at all-time lows. So you don't want the market to drive this. I think you want the spend to drive this.
Yeah, this is all extremely helpful. So I guess in terms of the message for the project managers, is the guidance, is it ready to go to construction within 24 months? Like what's the phrasing of that project definition?
Kevin, go ahead if you.
Yeah, no, I would think
It's
the way I think it's written is it's your highest priority projects whenever it is, and then you can, if it wins the approval of the group, then you can do the financing whenever you want to do it. But
right.
I wouldn't I wouldn't do the financing for lower ranked projects sooner and then not have enough money, because this 300 million is, your PAYGO is spoken for a while, and so you're trying to bring projects forward, that otherwise wouldn't have gotten PAYGO financing till after, is it 31, chat?
Right.
So you're trying to, for some of those key projects that haven't made the cut yet, is there a way to accelerate those and then evaluate those with this new potential source of funding, whatever it is, knowing that 300 is the max, and you may not want to use all 300 with this first go round. You may want to save some of that for future years.
Right. Okay.
Chet, we can be, flexible as far as the projects. I mean, money being fungible versus, what money you want to spend from PAYGO in future years versus on certain projects versus what money is available for bond funded projects, and provide we can provide as much flexibility as we can, so that if spending schedules change, from a, that we're maximizing what dollars we're using when on the projects that are selected. If that makes
Okay.
sense.
Yes.
I think 2 years is a good, I think a two-year look forward is a good gauge to use, because we're always more, I guess, ambitious in our spending schedules than reality. So I think 2 years is a good sort of frame to have in mind.
Okay. Robin. Are you there?
Spoke earlier about the percentages that go to localities, GRTC, and then the application process for the regional projects. How is the mechanism to pay the debt service back going to change this allocation? Like the annual debt service payments, how is that going to reshape those percentages and things like that?
It won't.
Go ahead, Megan.
Yeah, Robin, that any debt service payments for the authority would come out of the 35% that are
Okay.
going currently. So whether it's PAYGO or debt finance covering debt service, it all comes out of the authority's 35%.
Okay, that's what I assumed, but I didn't want to assume that, and just make sure I understood. Thank you.
No, that's a good question.
Yeah, that's a great question. And just so everybody's aware of, on the same page, that 50% is essentially pass-through money. I mean, CVTA doesn't even see it. So the local CVTA dollars are essentially committed. There is no opportunity for anything else to happen to that other than just to go into your reserves. Great questions. Any other comments? Okay, so I think that what I am feeling like is that staff needs to come up with kind of a rough outline of our understanding of what happens next, and that would be sent back out to you for any editing, comments, refinement, before I communicate that direction with the TAC at their June meeting. I mean, I'm hearing some of these thoughts in terms of, you know, Kevin's point about bring the priority project. We'll work on the timing and the availability of funds. You know, TAC needs to focus on what the priority needs are for each locality. Spend window, use of sales tax only, to set this up, those kinds of details. Does that make sense to everybody? Is there a alternative approach? I am absolutely open to ideas. Okay. Final thoughts? Kevin, Megan, Eric?
No, sounds like we have a plan.
Yeah, agreed. I'm sorry. First of all, I just want to apologize belatedly that I was late to the meeting. I had something pop up that was unexpected. So, but thank you all for moving forward with it, and everything sounds good. I think we're heading in the right direction, and we'll continue to share information.
Thanks. Oh, and if anybody didn't see it, I put the memo that the board approved in the chat, if you don't have that already. So
I tried to open that chat and it wouldn't open for me. So we might just circulate that via email if that's okay.
Sure. I think it's user error, but I'll send it by email.
Probably on my part. So.
Okay. Yeah, we'll send that out by email, and thank you, everyone. Yeah, I guess you probably get a few minutes back, but I appreciate your time today, and we will talk soon.
Thanks, Chet.
Thank you.
Take care.